Hello and welcome back to episode 4 of Charlie.inkspired. Huge shout out to the love on last week's episode, guys. I absolutely love reading your messages on my socials about how this is becoming part of your weekly routine. That's awesome. I'm sorry that you're seeing my face so often, but I really appreciate you joining me on this journey. I just really enjoy creating content and I want to do it more. I want to make more different types of content, but I'm a bit time poor at the moment. That's something I'm trying to work on, but I wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. Just another quick music plug from me. Of course, it wouldn't be an episode without it. I have to back myself. Sorry guys, I can't do anything about that. But my music video and latest song, Hush Hush, came out last week. So thank you so much to those of you that did check it out last week from last week's episode. I've been pleasantly surprised about the reaction to this one, I'm not gonna lie. And it's a piece that I'm really, really proud of. Like I said last week, it's super intense. The subject matter is super intense also, but it's a really important topic that we need to discuss. And the proceeds of any digital sales are directly going to England and Wales Rape Crisis Charity. So it's really important to me to get this message out there for you guys to watch, share, and if you want to donate to charity and get a piece of music as a result, you can buy the single on iTunes, wherever you want, wherever you buy your music, if you buy music, and that will just automatically be sent to them, and they do great work. So yeah, I always want to use my platform for good, but I can't do that without you guys, so thanks so much. And not to jinx things, but I think last week's episode was the best audio so far. Shout out to Simon Pitt again, who did the intro music for this podcast. He's also helped me a load with just audio issues I've been having in general. So yeah, massive shout out to him. You can find his website down in the description below. Make sure you go check it out because there's loads of awesome things on there. I feel like I'm slowly being the operative word, finding my feet on YouTube, and starting to understand how it works and how to schedule things and all of that technological stuff that I haven't learned yet. And I guess that's what you get for being in your late 20s and trying to start a new venture that involves technology. It's complicated. This week we're discussing another really dark topic, but it's one that I am eager to discuss, if that makes sense at all. It's another case that's really close to the UK's heart, and it's one that I'm personally quite invested in. And the case that we're going to cover today is the tragic case of Breck Bednar. And this case is another one that I studied whilst I was working at Surrey Police. So I do want to touch on that later as to why I covered it when I was working there and why I want to talk about that today. But before we get into today's episode, I want to say a very quick disclaimer. I mean absolutely no disrespect or harm to the families or victims involved in these cases. These episodes are researched by myself and myself only, with the evidence that's already available online. The research is compiled from different articles and documentaries on each and every case. In these episodes, I do share my opinion across the topics that it brings us around, so you absolutely do not have to agree with my opinion, but please respect that it is my opinion and my opinion alone, and as you are entitled to yours, I am also entitled to mine. And today's episode covers graphic content of violence and a sexual nature, so if you're not in the headspace for that today, that's absolutely fine. Pause here and go look after yourself and come back at a time when you are feeling up to it. So with all that being said, let's take a breath. Okay, let's begin. Breck Bednar was born on the 17th of March in 1999 to his parents Barry Bednar and Lauren Lefebvre. And 3 years before Breck was born, his parents moved from Michigan in the US to Caterham in Surrey in the UK, which is not far from me at all. The couple moved to the UK mostly because of Barry's job. He was an oil trader, so he had to travel around quite a lot, and there was quite a big trade for it here in the UK at the time. But Lauren also says in multiple clips following today's case that they felt safer in the UK because of the gun laws mostly, but they were excited to start their life in, nice leafy Surrey, as it's so often referred to. And Breck's mum, Lauren, was a teaching assistant, and I just have to absolutely say, before we get into too much detail, we love Lauren. She is just incredible, but we'll get on to more of that later. And whilst yes, Breck was the firstborn, he was quite young when he discovered that he was having siblings. Triplets, to be precise, where his parents brought into the world Carly, Chloe and Sebastian. So this family lived in Caterham all together in their family home until 2006, when sadly the parents decided to divorce. And Breck was 7 years old when his parents divorced, and whilst yes, that's a huge life event, it seemed like it was very pleasant, as pleasant as it can be, and they were really happy to spend time with each other still as a family, and Barry would often come and look after the kids. They had completely shared custody, so by all means it seemed like it was a pretty healthy breakup. Breck was a happy, kind, smart boy, and his mum in particular described him as warm, relaxed and kind-hearted, which is just really lovely to have, like a relaxed vibe to the point where people describe you as that. The ultimate goal. I wish I could say the same about me. And he had a lot of passions in life. He was part of the Air Corps training. He regularly went to church with his family on Sundays. And he was just really smart. Like in school, he was excelling. He loved maths and science and anything to do with computing. So because of this interest in science, naturally this progressed into technology. And Breck took to it like a duck on water. Lauren said that he was a complete natural. He used to spend hours just taking apart his computer and putting it back together again just to learn how it works, learn how to do it. And unsurprisingly, with a passion of computers and technology, soon followed a passion of gaming. And in 2012, Breck and some friends from church decided to start an online gaming club. They would talk to each other whilst they were playing games, chat about their week, chat about their friends' life, the game they were playing, you know, just being boys. And there were multiple hosts of this gaming chat, Breck included. However, there was one particular host of this server who wasn't part of the church and that Breck's parents didn't know personally. And in fact, the boys didn't know him either, and they'd never met. And to start with, the whole group really loved this, as you would at 14. You know, you've got an older guy in there who's really cool, you look up to him like a big brother. He was able to answer questions with life experience that your peers wouldn't have. So it's unsurprising that initially they really loved this. This online chat was hosted by none other than 18-year-old Lewis Danes. Yep, you got it. An 18-year-old in a chat with underage children. Let's be honest, they were 14 years old. Whilst yes, there's not a big age gap, they're still underage and he's very much overage. And to some this may seem completely innocent, you know, to start off with what they were just chatting about life and games and what they were playing. And I'm sure it was a big brother relationship to start with where he was offering advice. But we soon go to find out that this sadly wasn't always the case. Lewis would tell multiple lies and fabricate these ridiculous stories to try and impress the guys. He told them he was part of the Secret Service and he lived this lavish lifestyle in the US. Oh, and that he also owned several multi-million pound companies within computing and technology. And as obvious as this seems to us now, that this is almost completely impossible for an 18-year-old to achieve, the boys believed him. As you would at 14, I think I would have done exactly the same thing. If I was speaking to this boy every day, you start believing what you're being told if you're told it regularly enough, you know? And who can blame them? I'm pretty sure we all believed worse when we were 14. But Breck and his mother Lauren always had a super close relationship. And Lauren would always come in and check on Breck to make sure that he was okay. After all, teenage boys gaming online can spend hours in their room and, you know, not come up to the surface for air. So she was only doing the right thing. And she would often come into his room and take interest in what he was playing in, speak to him, ask if he needs anything, you know, normal kind of mother stuff. And Breck would always make a point of announcing when his mum walked into the room. Like he'd always go out of his way to say, "Hi mum," or "Oh, my mum's here now." And initially the rest of the boys in the group chat would say hello, ask how she is, ask what she's been up to for the day, and just be really nice. Because it's also important to remember that she does know most of these kids in the group chat because they go to church with them. But there was one voice in this group chat that Lauren didn't recognise. And because she knew the rest of the boys from church, I imagine that this one deep, mature voice stuck out like a sore thumb. And Lauren confronted Breck about this. She asked how she knew him, if they'd ever met before. And Breck told his mum all about Lewis, all about him being part of the Secret Service and being a millionaire and how he owned several companies. He even told his mum how Lewis found his fortune online through investments and Bitcoin. Lauren immediately tried to explain to Breck that this wasn't possible or probably wasn't the case. But Breck didn't want to hear it. And she asked to see a photo of him to, you know, confirm his identity. For all she knew, this could have been an old man just pretending to be an 18-year-old, like he could be much older than they possibly thought. But Breck simply replied, "I can't show you a photo. He can't show his face because he's in the Secret Service." Which, yeah, I mean, I guess he's got a point, right? Well, that would be the case if he was part of the Secret Service. So who is Lewis Danes? Well, it's no surprise that he wasn't a multimillionaire or CEO of several ridiculously successful companies, but instead he was an 18-year-old boy who lived alone in a flat. Lewis grew up as an only child and his parents divorced at quite a young age, and initially he lived with his mum, but his mother got a partner who soon got a job overseas, so with that he moved in with his dad, but for some reason this didn't last long either, and then he moved in with his grandparents. It's also reported that Lewis was in the care system for an unknown amount of time, but we don't know why. And by 16, he was in this flat alone. And the flat was owned by his grandparents, so I'm not too sure whether they passed on and they left it to him. I don't know. But you can already see at a young age, he's been bounced around a lot, and 16 is really young to live by yourself and be independent. Lewis, by all accounts, was a bit of a loner, shall we say. He didn't have any friends, and his neighbours often described him as a recluse. And we'll go into a bit more depth about Lewis's history in a moment, so back onto the timeline for now. So at this point, the boys are playing online every day, and every day they're getting closer. They're exchanging stories, asking for life advice, talking about their dreams, goals, ambitions, etc. And Breck would often speak about his passion about computing. Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he tell his friends about that? But Lewis just so happened to be a CEO of a computing company, and he thought, you know what, Breck, I'm going to offer you a job with 6 figures the moment you turn 18. Which again is only going to kind of push for Breck to believe in him and believe his lies. Obviously, we already know that this is bullshit, and we know that there is no company and there is no job waiting for him when he turns 18. But at 14, if someone offers you your dream job with an amazing salary, you're going to be like, yeah, okay, I believe you, I'll take it. And it's important to make a note that yes, whilst they are in a group chat, it's at this point that Lewis starts to take a real interest in Breck. Maybe that's because Breck was so open about what he liked, it was kind of easy for Lewis to pick up on those things. Like, the job offer is a prime example of this. And as we often see with predators like this, they'll find an in wherever they can and they'll latch onto that. And I think he felt like he could get that with Breck. So as a result of all this talking online every day, in 2013, Breck's behaviour started to change. And this was noticed by everyone, his friends and family all around him. The things he once loved soon turned into a memory. He stopped attending air cadets, he stopped attending church on Sundays with his family. His grades at school even started slipping, and just generally he was losing touch of reality of the person that he once was. And instead of welcoming his mum when she walked in on him gaming, he would become suddenly agitated that she was there. And his mum even noticed that, you know, the hellos from the boys in the group stopped happening, and every time she looked on the screen there would be a gif of a witch on there. And she could only guess which member of the group these were coming from. And yes, a lot of these symptoms that Breck starts to display, or changes in behaviour, shall I say, could be signs of hormones or, you know, just angsty teenage behaviour. But the difference in when it's a problem is how drastically and dramatically and quickly it changes. It's something so important to look out for in children and teenagers and young people in general. If there's a drastic change in personality, something's going on. And sadly, most often is the case that they're being groomed online by a group, a person, an individual, you know. And it wasn't just little things like, you know, a messier room or not doing your homework. Breck even started saying to his mum, well, Lewis doesn't believe in God, so why should I? Which is a massive ideology to just throw out the window within a few months. And rightfully so, Lauren just knew this had something to do with Lewis, because she realistically had no idea what information Lewis was feeding to Breck on a daily basis. And Lauren was still going to church, so she could see these other boys that were in the chat originally at church and see that they were fine or behaving well and speaking to their parents, and they seemed fine. So what was the difference with her son? Had Lewis selected Breck to be a target? And Lauren was absolutely right, because behind the scenes Lewis had started controlling Breck and putting ideas into his head. And it wasn't just Lauren that noticed this. His friends and, you know, a couple of boys in the group chat started speaking up about it. They even voiced their concerns with Breck, saying, you know, something isn't sitting right with us about this guy, but Breck would just get really agitated by this. He didn't want to hear it. You know, Breck couldn't understand why everyone was suddenly so against this stranger. He was his cool older friend that was always there for him. So he just, yeah, I guess you would be, if you couldn't see it, you'd be angry, wouldn't you? And at this point, Breck was in deep. He was believing everything that Lewis was throwing at him. But his friends were completely seeing through the lies. The whole group tried to meet in person several times, but Lewis would never show. And they even tried getting real pictures of him, but of course, he was in the Secret Service, so he couldn't possibly send a photo of him. So these boys kind of took a step back. They were starting to get really uncomfortable, and it just wasn't sitting right. So when I say Lauren did everything she could throughout this case to protect her son, she did everything. Lauren initially set up a meeting with the other parents and children of this group chat to raise some concerns around Lewis. The mums and other children agreed that something wasn't quite right. I think they all went home and had a word with their children that night. But Breck actually recorded this conversation and sent it to Lewis, which meant Lewis had a kind of inside tip on what was being said about him behind his back, and that kind of put a target on Lauren, which allowed Lewis to start poisoning these little thoughts and ideas about Lauren and her parenting towards Breck. Not only this, but Lauren actually contacted Surrey police because she was so concerned. And she was right, she was completely concerned that he was being groomed online, and she had no idea who this man who this adult was speaking to her child, and she had no idea what was being said, what was being exchanged. She just wanted this 18-year-old man to leave her child alone. She was desperate, and the police logged it, but that's about it. But if Surrey police had taken the time to look into Lewis Danes, they would have uncovered a bit more than just online chatting. And they probably would have taken action if they'd have bothered to look, because they would have discovered that Lewis had previous allegations of rape from a 15-year-old boy. Not only this, but there were also multiple reports of Lewis having indecent images of children on his computer. There isn't too much information on, why he isn't prosecuted for this. Lewis later down the line reveals that this was disproved by police and courts, and that's why he wasn't arrested, and the media are making it out to be something it's totally not. But it's worth noting, because it does give us a massive insight to a possible reason that Lewis could be speaking so much to Breck. And following the meeting with the other parents and speaking to Surrey police, Lauren wanted to speak to Lewis directly. So with Breck in the room, she started online chatting to him. And Breck agreed to this because he thought, well, Mum will chat to him and she'll see how lovely he is, she'll see how much of a good friend he is. But Lewis took this as an opportunity to tell Lauren how to parent her son. Lewis. He's not very smart. Because, if you're thinking in a criminal mindset, you would take this opportunity to completely manipulate the mum into thinking you're really good for your son, and maybe even encourage her to let you hang out in person, right? But no, he just completely goes off on one and says this, you parent your child wrong. But I think this just goes to prove part of Lewis's character. I really don't think he has that much respect for authority or just relationships in general. As a result of all of this, Lauren took away Breck's computer in hope that this would break all communication between Breck and Lewis. But Lewis was always one step ahead, and he actually sent a burner phone over to Breck to use so they could stay in communication whilst he didn't have his PC or Xbox on him. So they were still communicating daily. And the fact that he did this only added to Breck's 14-year-old beliefs that this rich friend just really wanted to be his friend, really wanted to speak to him and genuinely cared. But without the computer, Breck's behaviour slowly started to improve, and Lauren initially was thrilled at that. He started attending church with his family again, he was just generally happier and in a better mood all the time, and it looked like things were, back to normal. So with this, Lauren gave him back his computer on one condition, that he doesn't speak to Lewis. But little did she know they'd been speaking this whole time. And in February 2019, Breck went on a school trip to Spain with his class. His grades and schoolwork were improving again, and he just seemed really happy, like he was in the best place. And on this school trip, he actually got his first girlfriend. He flew home on the 15th of February, and his father and younger siblings went to go pick him up from the airport, and they saw him walk out of the plane at the airport with his girlfriend, and they all noted just how happy he looked and how sweet it was to see him get his first girlfriend. I don't know, it's like a milestone, we all remember our first relationship, or first relationship that feels like a bit of a step up compared to just standing in the playground and kind of looking at each other. But behind the scenes, things with Lewis were only getting darker. And after this trip, Lewis told Breck that he was dying, and that he needed someone to leave his companies and wealth to, and that he wanted to leave this all to Breck. And I can't help but wonder whether this sudden jump up is because of the girlfriend. Like, did he feel like he was about to lose Breck because he was suddenly getting a girlfriend and going to be spending more time with her? Was it like a last-ditch attempt to clutch at straws to just get him in? So with this lie, Lewis told Breck that he needs to meet him in person, to hand over the companies, to show him the ropes kind of thing. And we have to remember that Breck is so young. He's 14 years old. And at 14 years old, if someone's like, okay, I'm going to give you millions of pounds and multiple companies in a topic that you're really interested in, but what you have to do is come see me and I'll hand everything over. You're going to do it, or at least you're going to take it very seriously. So after returning from the school trip, Breck asked his father Barry if he could stay around a friend's for a sleepover on the 16th, but he specified that this friend was from school. And Barry said yes. I mean, why wouldn't he? It's not uncommon that after these school trips you kind of have chats with your friends of like, hey, we should do this after the trip, we should do this when we get home. But the truth was, there was no friend from school that he was planning to go visit. It was actually Lewis that he was going to meet. And Lewis fed a script for Breck to tell his dad in order to convince him to let him go out. Lewis even came up with a fake name and everything. He had everything covered because he really needed this to happen. He told Breck, if your father asks who you're going to see on Sunday, tell your dad you're going to meet a friend who's 14 years old, whose name is Edward Bly, in your class, and he lives down the road in Caterham. And I find it really interesting that he includes the age in there because he knows that his age is a problem. And he knows specifically that sleepovers with children is wrong and his father would never agree to that, so he has to come up with a lie. But I think this proves that he's aware of what he's doing. He knows what he's doing is wrong. And to Breck, this obviously feels like, wow, he just really wants to spend time with me. He's so cool, he's helping me come up with an excuse. Which is heartbreaking because I think Breck's innocence really shines through on all of this. He just wants to be friends with his cool, older friend. And he probably is just really desperate to meet this guy in person. They've been speaking for over a year every day. They've probably got super close and he's just desperate to actually be friends with him. So realistically, Breck probably would have done anything to make it happen. And it's absolutely not Breck's fault for lying to make this meet happen. He's been manipulated and groomed for months at this point, almost to the point where I'd argue that he didn't have much control in the situation at all. So at 7 a.m. on Sunday the 16th of February, Lewis sent a taxi to go collect Breck. And this taxi collected Breck at his family home in Surrey and drove over an hour and 38 minutes to Essex to Lewis's flat. That is such a long time to be in a taxi, especially when you're alone, especially when you're 14 years old. And this would have cost so much money, which is only going to add to the facade that Lewis has built up over these months or years. That he has this money and he needs to give it to Breck, and look how important he is. And a few hours into being there, Breck actually texts his dad to say he's having a great time and to double check that it was okay to stay over, which of course his dad agreed to. After all, he's heard from him, he said he's safe, he's having a good time, and he doesn't want the day to end, so why would he say no? And there are actually clips of Lauren saying she's quite grateful that he had a good time initially, and I guess he would be because Breck probably built up expectations of Lewis in his head and he was probably so excited to meet him and finally be friends in person. So I think we can take some comfort that during the first few hours they did have a good time. But sadly, the positivity and the good times didn't last. And on the 17th of February at 11:04 a.m, Lewis rang Essex police. Throughout this phone call he is calm, collected and dictating pretty much the whole conversation. To the point where he's telling this officer what to do or how to do their job, similarly to how he spoke to Lauren about her parenting. And he starts the phone call with a very interesting line of, "I need police and the forensic team to come to my address." The forensic team. Why? Which is really interesting because he does go on to say that this, of course, was an accident.
Essex Police Emergency.
Hi there. Okay. Hello. I need police and a forensics team to my address, please.
What do you mean? What's happened?
And it's the cold statement, "My friend and I had an altercation and he didn't make it out alive." Oh, it's just so chilling the way he says that. So matter of fact, so cold. I really think this phone call evokes something in us. And you can hear the panic in the officer's voice as she takes this call. She's like, "Are you telling me you've just killed someone?"
My friend and I got into an altercation, and I'm the only one who came out alive.
Are you telling me you've killed somebody?
Yes, I am.
Throughout this call, he's protesting like this was self-defense and that Breck was trying to kill him.
I have a chest of drawers. I had a penknife on there.
Breck grabbed this,
Yes.
what, in order to harm himself?
No, in order to harm me.
Which, from what we know about Breck, is ridiculous. I don't think anyone could ever imagine Breck being that aggressive or in that way at all.
He came to stay with me the night. I did my best to comfort him. I woke up this morning.
Why did he come to stay with you?
Because he was fed up with his home life.
A lot of people discuss this call and say that the call taker did do a good job, but I actually disagree with that statement. I think she did a wonderful job with what she was presented. She asks where the weapon is. She gets that information to keep the officers safe. She tries to get as much detail as she can. And we've got to remember this whole time, Lewis is being like, "Stop interrupting me. Let me talk. This is being recorded anyway."
Can you not interrupt me with this part?
Okay, go on.
Okay. This is being recorded anyway, isn't it?
Yep.
I grabbed a knife and I stabbed him once in the back of the neck, I believe somewhere near the brainstem. Happened that the fight ended with me cutting his throat.
So I think she did a fantastic job, and luckily I never had to answer a call like this in my time, but my God. Sometimes, people would throw things at you that are so shocking that you're like, because you're a human being. And yes, you kind of just have to snap out of it and realise, okay, I need to get as much information as I can. But I think she did a fantastic job.
I don't remember what happened after that. All I know is I dropped the knife in my hallway. I stripped down and just sat in the shower. I don't know. Look, are the police on their way? I can hear something.
They are.
Okay, I'm going to go and do my part. Please, thank you for your help.
Right, just listen.
Immediately, police arrived at the scene to discover blood everywhere. Breck had been stabbed in the neck and it was lying face down on Lewis's bed. The knife was found in the hallway in the exact place that he told the officer over the phone. Police also found a bin bag full of bloody clothes and duct tape that had clearly been used to bind someone by the wrists and ankles. It had been cut off with scissors, so it was quite obvious that this was used on a person. So from this information we can tell that this is nothing like self-defense. First and foremost, the duct tape. You wouldn't bound someone with duct tape if it was self-defense. You wouldn't have the time. Self-defense is quick. His bloody clothes had been removed and Lewis had even showered after stabbing Breck. Alongside this already damning evidence, multiple hard drives were completely submerged in water in the bathroom sink, which tells us only one thing, that Lewis had something on there that he didn't want the police to discover. And we'll never know what was on these, but we can hazard a guess. The forensic team were able to discover that Lewis had tried to clean up some of the evidence, but they also made the grim discovery that there was Lewis's semen mixed in with some of the blood. And we have no idea why that was there. There's not much information to suggest that Breck was raped or was sexually assaulted, and we don't know if this was something that Lewis did after. And frankly, I don't want to know. But I think during this whole build-up, we've been able to tell that, there is some form of sexual nature driving Lewis to do this. And if all this wasn't sick enough, Lewis actually took photos of Breck's dead body and sent it to some of his friends. It wasn't long before these images took to social media and they were being spread around like wildfire. Just think how traumatizing that would be to his friends, family, anyone who saw that image. Children that saw an image of this dead body, of someone they knew. Yeah, awful. In fact, Breck's younger brother Sebastian even got a text from a friend saying, "I'm sorry, what happened to your brother?" And they had no idea what they were talking about. And I think this was kind of a final chance at a sick fantasy, if I'm honest. But what it does show us is that Lewis loves control. With the way he spoke to the officer, the way he told Breck what to do or say, the way he spoke to Lauren about her parenting, but also by taking the last thing that he possibly could away from Breck, which was his dignity, and taking away the respect for his family and friends to be told in a controlled and calm manner, or as much as possible, to find out via social media or hear rumours that this had been circulating prior. That's just a last-ditch attempt to just really hurt the family or have control of the situation. Immediately, Lewis was arrested on suspicion of murder, and he stuck to his story of self-defense for a while. He fabricated this lie that when Breck woke up in the morning, he was suddenly suicidal, and that forced him to pick up a knife and threaten Lewis. And Breck was getting so angry that Lewis feared for his life, so he had no choice but to fight back. But another major flaw in this story is that Lewis says that after being stabbed in the neck, Breck continues to fight. Which, I don't know if you know much about the major arteries that are going on in your neck, but the minute one of those is severed, you are bleeding out. You are essentially paralysed from blood loss. And Breck would have died almost instantly. Within a couple of minutes, he bled to death. The blood loss would have been catastrophic. So there was absolutely no way Breck would have been up fighting back. He wouldn't have had the strength to do it. Lewis claimed that he tried to stop the bleeding, he tried to perform CPR, but his attempts were just failed. So after this, he hopped into the shower, changed his clothes, had a think, collected his thoughts, and then decided to phone the police. We have no idea at what point or how this turned so violent so suddenly. We have no idea if Lewis's intentions were to always kill Breck. But the fact that he had purchased duct tape tells us there was a motive to do something, and we can only use our imaginations to assume what this would be. Maybe Lewis tried to rape Breck and he put up a fight and that made him angry and he accidentally killed him, or he didn't plan to kill him, or maybe this was his plan all along to kill him and it was part of some awful fantasy. We just don't know, and frankly, unless Lewis tells us, we never will. In November 2014, the trial began, and Lewis's face was blasted everywhere as he was dubbed the babyface killer. Because he looks like a child, but he also just looks so cold. And there is something really striking about his images at the station. They just seem so cold. He looks so young. And it just makes you think, what on earth went wrong? What on earth caused him to do this? And initially, this whole time, he's still protesting his innocence. He's still screaming that it was self-defense. That was until the day that he took to the stand. And in a shocking 180 turn, Lewis pleaded guilty to murder. And again, I think this was less admitting his wrongdoings and more taking control of the situation and doing his best to probably shock the family one last time. So with a confession, a guilty plea, and an undeniable stack of evidence against him, Lewis was sentenced to life with 25 years in prison for the murder of Breck Bednar, where he remains to this day. Sadly, he didn't remain in prison quietly so far, as some blog posts from Lewis hit the internet. We don't know how they got out, but it's no real secret that people in prison have their ways of getting access to technology. And in this blog post, he goes into some really odd, deep topics that Lauren has later said only Lewis or Breck would know. So she's absolutely convinced that it is him. And I can't imagine how terrorising this would be for the family. You think it's finally over, this awful human is finally behind bars, and then, bam, no. There goes the internet again, just constantly finding ways to torment you. And you can find this open letter as such online if you really want. Just Google Lewis Dane's blog post and it'll come up. But it's so conflicting to read. In this blog post, he mentions that he was actually leaving for a job abroad and Breck saw the suitcases and got really mad. He didn't want him to leave, and that's what caused a fight to ensue. So it's a completely different story. He initially told the police about Breck being suicidal. He also mentions the two friends that he sent the images to. He says that he sent them to these boys because he trusted them, and these boys gave him advice to come forward and come clean. But that feels completely different to how it was portrayed. I don't know what's true in that particular scenario. And on top of it all, Lewis makes multiple references about an abuser in Breck's life. And I won't go into too much detail about that. You can read it if you really want. But I think this was more a snippet of the manipulation that Lewis was feeding to Breck. I have no doubt that Breck mentioned in passing an argument or a disagreement that he had with his parents, because you're teenagers, you do have arguments or disagreements with your parents, and you're going to think that they're the most unfair thing you've ever come across. But it feels like Lewis twisted this into a mass story of abuse and manipulation. He stated that the police are aware of these allegations and they have everything on file. And in a final attempt to confuse the reader, he spins an apologetic twist on it, where he says he's so sorry that Breck is dead. I think it's safe to say from everything that we know about Lewis, he's not exactly well. I don't know if there's some narcissism going on there, with the obsession to control, and the way he presents himself as posed or really intelligent feels a little narcissistic to me, but I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm nowhere near it, so please, that's just a throwaway opinion. But I definitely think there's something that he's never received support for in his life. And I wanted to cover this case again because this is another case that Surrey police have learnt from. Since this case, Surrey police have released multiple statements and documentaries completely admitting their fault in their part in this, because they absolutely could have and should have done more work on this. They should have investigated Lewis the minute Lauren reported it, but they didn't. And I don't know if that's the contact centre officer that didn't investigate this upon the initial call, maybe they just logged it, or whether it was a case of this was passed to officers to attend but they just never attended. We don't know. And frankly, there's not really an excuse for it. But what I can say is they have absolutely learned about this case, and this is used in training. And because of this case, multiple similar instances are now taken very seriously. Like, I myself remember taking a call from a mother concerned about grooming of her child on the internet, and I remember Breck's face appearing in my mind and thinking, I absolutely have to do something about this. And I did. I escalated it for police to attend, to safeguard the child, to have a chat with them, parents and the family and the children, to make sure they're being safe online. So yes, the failings of the police in this case were catastrophic. But I do hope you take some comfort in the fact that yes, they do actually learn from these mistakes. And Breck and this case completely changed the way these are dealt with in the future. So yes, it's horrible and it's no comfort at all, but children are now safeguarded more seriously because of this. And finally, following this awful story, Breck's family have set up a foundation in his name called the Breck Foundation to promote the dangers of speaking to strangers online and just the dangers that being online can bring a child. Lauren has also attended multiple schools where she's given assemblies to talk about online safety. So yeah, massive shout out to Lauren on this one. She did absolutely everything she could to protect her son, and now she's doing everything else that she can do to protect future victims, which again is so brave. I can imagine it must be so inviting to just want to curl up and just ignore the world after going through something like this. But to take public stand and turn it into something good, that's a new level of respect from me. So I'll link the charity down low in the description so you can go and check it out. So there we have it, guys. Take a deep breath with me. That was the tragic case of Breck Bednar. Now that that's over, it's time to go and do something nice for yourself today, and it's your weekly reminder to drink some water because you probably haven't done that in a while. I promise you'll feel better for it. In fact, that headache you've had for a few days might actually go away if you drink some water. As always, guys, a massive shout out for you to making it to the end of such a really intense case. So make sure you subscribe by clicking the subscribe button down below, or there's a little heart over here, somewhere at the bottom of the screen. You can click and it'll automatically sub you so you never miss your next dose of true crime from me. Comment below which case you want me to cover next. I really want some suggestions from you guys because I want to record content that you want to watch, you know? Or even comment below what you made of this case. I really enjoy seeing the comments on my videos by just people saying they think I've spoken about it really well or my empathy's come across really well. That means a lot because it's quite scary talking about these topics because you can upset some people because you're talking about horrific things realistically. You're always going to get people that don't agree with it, and that's fine. So with that, stay safe and I'll catch you next time.